This episode is sponsored in part by PTZ Optics. Why hire a camera operator when the control is in your hands? Visit ptzoptics.com for more information. And by NewTek, makers of the TriCaster TC1. Stun your viewers, not your accountant. Visit newtek.com for more information.
Hey guys, it's Thursday. Welcome to another edition of, you guessed it, Creators Corner. And I've got a special guest here tonight that we're going to talk to here in just a few minutes. And I want to kind of put this out there as we do every week. I appreciate everybody bearing with us. My guest and I, we both are in Ohio, and so we both had some rough weather last week. And I think it was a few weeks prior to that I was also ill. So we finally have been able to get together and get this show going, and I want to let everybody know if you have any questions, comments, you can leave comments as we're going, as long as it pertains to the conversation. I'm happily pull that up, but know at the end we will have a Q&A session that you can ask Johnny some of your questions. So let's, without further ado, let's kind of get into this. So after developing a passion for video production, a man after my own heart, and video games early in life, he pursued both things separately for a long time. Starting out with the TurboGrafx 16, the system's library quickly solidified his love of the medium, which would only be further strengthened by his experience with the Sega Genesis and later the PlayStation 1. As his professional career in media led him to working in the news and marketing fields, he started working in the background on finding ways to combine his love of video games and producing content. And he goes on, after becoming somewhat delusioned with both the straight news media and games media fields, he began carving out his own path with a career as an independent professional voiceover talent and video editor. He's also shifted his presence in games media entirely to his JohnnyGrafx, if you haven't seen it, YouTube and TikTok channels, where he critiques and analyzes games and the game industry from across the retro and modern era. Joining me is none other than the man himself, Mr. Johnny Cantees, or you guys know him as JohnnyGrafx. Welcome, sir.
Yeah. I'm disillusioned with the media space, not delusioned.
Oh, disillusioned. Sorry about that.
I'm not like seeing things that aren't there. You know?
Well, it could be delusional too. So
it could.
No, it was interesting reading the bio. I was telling him in the pre-show a little bit because I said, that was sort of why I kind of got into the gaming space a little bit. But what? I was pulling this up here. What made you just kind of flip the light switch on before we kind of really deep dive into this, and said, all right, enough's enough. I got to get involved. I got to do something here.
In gaming?
Yeah, bridging that concept, because I want to touch on that really quick, because I think that kind of shapes your whole career to where you're at right now in the gaming space.
That's an interesting question. I really, I don't know if there was a single switch. There's really a series of switches.
Okay.
I think that kind of led me to it, because there was me finding out, basically seeing how the sausage was made in traditional media and news media, and seeing how kind of ghoulish and soulless that can often be. And so that was a big switch. And then, and when I went into games media more in a sort of professional, thanks, Scott. Scott got me this shirt for Christmas. Another big switch was kind of a similar experience in games media, where I'm writing articles and writing reviews, and we can get into this as much as you want or as little as you want, because I don't want to, you want to keep the show light and fun, but basically, finding out how miserable and kind of ghoulish that industry can be at times, and how disingenuous that can be. And just kind of seeing, learning things from these experiences, getting better. Mm-hmm. And I'm thankful for that, but ultimately, sort of feeling, maybe unintentionally, but ultimately just kind of getting pushed into the idea of, okay, well, I'll just do this myself. I'll do it the way that makes sense for me then, forget this. I'll just do it my way.
Yeah.
And maybe I make it, maybe I don't, but at least I have some integrity, by the end of it. So, that, and I think just trying to simplify my life a little bit too, because I spent a lot of my teens and 20s, doing a lot of different things. And I was spread really thin for a lot of my young adult life and a lot of my professional life, often having multiple jobs, while going to school somewhere, and, and having roles in school, like the National Broadcasting Society. I was always really active in that at college. And so part of it was also me wanting to like just condense things and do less things and do them better, as opposed to like doing a million things, at 20% capacity, So a lot of switches there.
No, but I think that's interesting, because that was kind of the reason that I kind of got into the space, is because of, I looked at it, at least from the live side of it. Like if nobody's seen your stuff, they need to go check it out. Besides the TurboGrafx stuff, and we'll get into that a little bit. But the quality of editing and things, that's where I struggle a lot with it. I am not a video editor. I hate post-production. It stretches me a lot to do YouTube videos. I am, as you saw, I'm a live guy. I can make things look really good live, and that's what I wanted to do in this space. So hearing you say that, like where you're trying to, you're like, I'm tired of the way this person's doing it. I'm tired of the way this magazine's doing it. I'm tired of the way this media outlet's doing it. Let's do it the way I want to do it, and I can build an audience off of it. And I think that's totally cool. And I want to set the stage with that, because I thought that was very interesting, as to why you did that. And I'm sure a lot of people could say, well, maybe I could do it better. Yeah, but there's something about it when you get that mindset of doing it your way, that the passion grows, as opposed to doing it for somebody else that you really don't want to do it their way, right?
Yeah, and like, I think there was a really big realization at one point. I can't exactly pinpoint when I decided this, probably somewhere around 2020 or so. But I realized me doing it on my own and failing seemed preferable to doing it their way and succeeding.
Yeah.
That's ultimately and that sounds extreme, but that's kind of where I ended up, intellectually with it. And that doesn't mean I'm opposed. I still work with different outlets on certain things, but it has to be, there's a narrow way that I'm willing to do it. And of course that narrows my options, but that's fine with me, because, if I can't do it in a way that makes me happy, I'd rather not do it anyway. So it's fine. And I still have a lot of good relationships in that sector. And I don't want to throw anybody individually under the bus. It's just kind of this swirling torrent of things that's just it's really nobody's fault, but nobody helps it either.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm just glad to generally not be involved with it.
No, it's good. It's good that you kind of branched out and embarked in your own journey, per se, to do it your way. There's nothing wrong with that. So let's go back. Let's go back in time, because I ask all of the guests this. If you're familiar with this, anybody in the chat room, I go here. Were you brought up with the video games, or did you do like a lot of us did? You had them as a kid, you had maybe a system or two, sold them when you went to college, and then found yourself rebuying all this stuff at a premium cost and being ridiculous like the rest of us.
There was some of that. There's definitely some of that. a lot of my turbo stuff is from my childhood, though. I managed to hang on to almost all of that. The original console I played back in, 91 or 90, whenever my dad picked it up, that I have. Several of the games, the really valuable games that I would never buy, like Soldier Blade and Airzonk and a lot of these games that are like, they're worth a small fortune now. Those survived, because if those didn't survive, I just probably never would have wound up with them again. I think my original controller, I have that one too, because there's like a weird stain on it. And I remember, I don't know what that's from, but I know that that's been there since I was old enough to do anything. I was born in 88. So when Dad brings home the turbo at 91, I'm barely able to even comprehend it, so.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Like, so your dad brings it home to you, right?
Yeah.
Did you ask for it, Or was that just Dad surprising you one day with a video game system?
I think he bought it for himself, and then he saw how much I loved it and was like, "Oh, don't you like it? Great, it's for you." It was one of those things, and and it just worked out because we both liked it, and we would pass the controller back and forth. When I was older, when I was a little bit old, old enough to actually operate it.
Yeah.
We would. I remember distinctly Splatterhouse. We would pass the controller back and forth, and and it wasn't long before I started eclipsing him just in terms of being good at it because, he had a life and I could just sit here all day and play TurboGrafx and occasionally go use the bathroom. And, and that was about all I had to worry about, So, so I was able to eclipse him and my interest in it just totally leapfrogged his interest in it. So it just kind of became mine, even though I think initially he did buy it for himself and he just tried to spin it later because he saw how much I loved it. And he was like, oh yeah, this is for both of us.
Well, then the reason I asked that is because a lot of the times, a lot of the guests, and including myself, a lot of us had like either a Genesis or we had an NES as our first console. But then sometimes you start talking to people that, like yourself, who is a hardcore TurboGrafx fan. I didn't become a TurboGrafx fan until I had adult money and an adult job when I got married and
like a lot of people.
Yeah, and bought one because I never had it as a kid. And I always wanted to. Yeah. And so I just thought that was interesting, like to hear you say that your dad bought it. And it did have some of the best video pinball games on the TurboGrafx. I think we can agree with that. Devil's Crush and you had Alien Crush was good. Now, some people fight me on that. They'll be like, well, Devil's Crush was good, but Alien's Crush is not so good. But I kind of like them both. But
who says the Alien Crush isn't good?
You got the people that like to.
I want names.
Oh, just read some comments.
The right way to say that?
Actually, no. Actually, if you go back and I did a YouTube short series on some TurboGrafx games. Just read the comments. You'll find the people in there. They're probably just fly-by-nighters, but
that's whack. That's whack, dude.
Yeah.
They're both great. And Time Cruise is good too. People don't talk about Time Cruise. That's a good one.
So I think there's a lot to go with that. So your dad brings you home a TurboGrafx. He says, "Here, oh, you like it? Well, it's yours, and I'll still play with you with it." After that, you're about what age did he bring this home to you?
I want to say 91. So I would have been, born in 88. I would have been 3 or 4, depending on the time of the year.
Wow. So you had it early in life.
Yeah. And, that wasn't my first video game then. My first video game was some local pizza place. It might have been an actual Pizza Hut. I don't remember, but we were eating pizza as a family somewhere. And there was a Super Mario Brothers arcade cabinet.
Okay.
And we finished eating and they were like paying the bill and doing stuff. And I just ran over to this thing and I just started slamming buttons and doing stuff. And I was like,
it a play choice or was it
on the screen?
Was it a play choice 10 or was it like an actual Mario Brothers cabinet?
As far as I can recall, it was just like a dedicated Mario Brothers cabinet. It was like,
okay.
It was as far as I remember, it was basically the NES game. I don't know if there was an official arcade version of that. I don't really know a lot about it. There was
the play choice, the play choice 10, which had like the original Super Mario Brothers on it. That's why I was wondering, because there is that Mario Brothers arcade, which was kind of like, I don't know if it was on like the Lost Levels, where it kind of looked like Donkey Kong, where Mario and Luigi would jump up on the sides and stuff and kind of
the way I remembered it was basically an arcade version of that NES game, but that could be memories being conflated.
No. It might have been a play choice because play choice was kind of big back then. So that's cool.
Yeah, so that was the first one, and I was like, oh, I can actually control the little people on the screen, even though I'm horrible at it. I was like, wow, this is great. This is mind blowing. And it wasn't long after that where Dad brings home the TurboGrafx, and we're messing around with. I want to say Splatterhouse was probably the first game, maybe Legendary Axe. I don't know. It was one of those side-scrolling, platformer action games. And it just every couple weeks or so, he would bring home another game. It would be Soldier Blade, it'd be Arizonk, it'd be this or that. And I don't know where he was getting them, but he was getting them. And after, a few months or so, we had, 20 games or so. And, like a lot of kids, I don't know about you, but me and a lot of the kids I hung out with, when we had consoles, we only had maybe 5, 10, 15 games at a time at most,
And you always shared them. So you'd have new games.
Yeah,
You would
we'd
trade
share
them
them or
around.
trade them or
Yep.
borrow them or whatever. And so for me to have like 20 games for something, that I thought was really cool, because it was like, wow, I can just, the world's my oyster. What do I want to do? I can do anything I want. And of course, looking at our rooms now, it's like, it's child's play, literally.
So
But yeah,
so
go ahead.
growing up though, that they pointed out in the chat room that was the same time in the same era that the Super Nintendo came out. So you didn't really have the experience of the original Nintendo growing up, because that was kind of before your time, so to speak.
We were not a Nintendo family. We really weren't. We didn't
Okay.
care about like Mario or Yoshi. Now, I had neighbors who they had a Nintendo, and I thought it was cool. We went over there and played. They had these controllers where there were the touchpads where the buttons would be, and they gave no resistance or no feedback whatsoever. They would just sense your finger touching them. And it's, completely impractical, but it was one of those Nintendo things, where they just kind of tried weird stuff. And I just thought that did blow my mind. And I thought that was cool. But just my personal taste is Turbo and then Sega Genesis, and Sega really spoke to me. They were like edgy. It was cool. It was a middle finger. It was a friendly cartoon,
Right.
but it was kind of a middle finger to the the status quo. And
Well, that's what I was going to say. You kind of went from, in your bio, you went from Turbo to Genesis to
right.
PlayStation. You not once mentioned, and that's what I was going to ask you with that. And you kind of answered that question. So you were not really a Nintendo fan, or your traditional Nintendo fan, Atari or anything. It was, you kind of
No,
dove
Atari.
in.
There was an Atari at my babysitter. We had this lady that babysat like all the kids on my street while all the parents were at work.
Mm-hmm.
And she had an Atari 2600. And I remember messing around with that a couple of times, and it was cool. I remember Tank, with that Tank game, Combat.
Combat. Mm-hmm.
And I do remember doing that. But of course, by then I'd already played the Turbo. So I was like, this is okay, but it ain't no Splatterhouse, this ain't no Soldier Blade. So it wasn't super impressive to me, but I liked it okay. And I liked Nintendo okay too. I just, if I ever had a choice, I would always gravitate towards something like Sega or Turbo, or later on, PlayStation.
They're saying, Retro Rob, he's saying in the chat room that you're a rebel. Brian Wiz from Pittsburgh Gaming Expo, let's go Steelers.
Let's go Steelers. Man, next year's going to be weird. Our quarterbacks are gone. I don't know what's going to happen. We re-rolled the whole thing, basically. We re-rolled.
Probably a good thing. It's like the Philadelphia teams. They do the same thing.
I don't know. I thought Kenny Pickett was like, people are so hard on Kenny Pickett, man. Like, the dude's like, he's like 12 years old. Like, can we give him some time to develop? Jeez Louise, we were so hard on him. But yeah, we got some pros in there now, so I think we'll see what happens.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people, like when I talk to them about some of these consoles, and I'm going to say it like this, but it's not to demean the console at all, because I am a TurboGrafx fan. But the subpar at the time of us growing up, they were considered the subpar consoles,
Right.
because nobody owned them. Nobody wanted them. It was either you had a Nintendo or a Genesis, and then you fell into that other category where everything was a Nintendo. It didn't matter if you had a Sega, it was still a Nintendo. That's what people called it. It could be Atari, and they called it Nintendo.
Yeah,
so,
like Jacuzzi.
Right. So my question for you, since you did have a TurboGrafx growing up, like I had mentioned, nobody, I didn't even see one unless I went to Toys R Us. I never played one unless I went to Toys R Us. Never physically owned it until I was older. Did you have friends that had the TurboGrafx after you got it, that you kind of had like a click? No?
No, but anytime I had a friend come over and play it, they had a great time.
Okay, so you were pretty much the only one in your group of friends that just had the TurboGrafx.
That I can remember, yeah. And I had a lot of friends coming and going. I mean, this was like this was a street full of kids. And when we moved to Charleston, that was when we were in Weston, a very small little town.
Okay.
When we moved to Charleston, when I was about 6, it was like this big street full of kids. They all had something. So there might have been a TurboGrafx in there somewhere, but I genuinely don't remember. I feel like I was the only one.
It just seems like that's the consensus. Yeah, I mean, that's the consensus. It was kind of like with the Neo Geo, even, a lot of people say, I seen it in the arcade. They had it at the bowling alley, but I never saw the
Mm-hmm.
console, right? And now, even in the circle of the retro gaming community, to hear people say, "Well, I have a Neo Geo Pocket." I had a Neo Geo Pocket, and I should have kept it. But
Mm-hmm.
the actual consoles, to see that people are collecting them and having them is just, it blows my mind, because nobody had one growing up, even
I
that
never
system.
saw one. Yeah, I never saw.
No.
I never naturally came across one. I still haven't really. I mean, I've seen them at like gaming stores and stuff, but I genuinely don't know anyone in my personal life that has a Neo Geo anything.
Yeah, Mr. Rightway is the only one. Him and his and Elliot are the ones that I know that have them and collect for them. So,
Oh, okay, yeah.
but yeah, I'm with you on that. So the Turbo Grafx kind of evolved, right? Now it's kind of
Oh
become the
yeah.
most sought after retro game. And I'm sorry for you guys out there that don't agree with this, but it's facts. Turbo Grafx. No, I'm joking, of course. Turbo Grafx is one of the most sought after consoles in the retro gaming community. People are looking for them left and right. Every store I go to,
Yep.
people are always like, "Hey, do you have a Turbo Grafx?" No, I don't have. Those things are they're like a unicorn. They're impossible to find. Um,
And if you do find them, they're out of reach because of the price
Price.
that gets slapped on them.
I was fortunate. I got mine for $129 on Mercari before like a huge spike happened.
That's pretty
Um,
good.
Came with Bonk 2 complete in box, and I mean
Nice.
box, not just the flip cover.
The
Um,
cardboard box.
yes, so I had that. It had
Yeah.
everything. I just didn't have the box up for the console, but it did have the back plate for it.
Okay.
Um, Now they want $300, $400, sometimes $500. Mine had the tap that came with it, so you could do 4 players on it.
Oh man, you got a really good deal.
I got a
You got a
good,
really good
I got
deal.
a steal on it. So
Yeah.
it was in good shape. I took it to Stone Age Gamers, see if it needed to be recapped. They said it looks good, so I didn't even bother with that.
Okay.
But
How long ago was that?
I want to say like 4 years ago, maybe. But it was before the pandemic, so maybe it was
You
5.
may want to have them check it again. Maybe every few years have them check it because
Oh
those capacitors are gonna go. It's not a matter of if, it's
no, it
when.
will. Yeah, they're gonna go. My Turbo Express, they did recap that. That was done recently, but
Let
that's
me
the
ask you
big
about
thing.
the Turbo Express real quick. Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
What is your favorite game to play on it? Because I know certain games kind of feel a little different because the screen is smaller and it's sort of a different vibe. Like, what's your favorite game to play on
Um,
that?
I have been right now. I have been going back and playing the Bonk series through it. So I hate to sound cliche,
That is,
but it is. But it is. Bonks are like my favorite. Like, but I told you like in pre-show, I want to do the Newtopia.
yeah,
I want to go through all that. The one I have the hardest time for is Bonks 3 on the Express, because he's so big. Like the power up on it where he gets so big.
yeah. He's just like this giant baby
Yeah,
that takes up the whole thing.
I have a I feel it just feels clunky on the handheld. So now that you say that, that kind of makes sense. Um,
Hmm.
the pinball's tough on it, whether you're playing Devil's Crush or you're playing Alien Crush.
Yeah, I bet.
It's kind of tough on it because it's, even with the LCD, it's a bigger screen.
Hmm.
It's kind of tough. So I just
Well,
had it
Bonk
for 2
Three.
weeks. So yeah, I don't really have a total favorite, I guess we'll say.
Okay. Well, Bonk 3 is clunky no matter what you play it on, just so
Okay,
you
so it's
know.
not just
It
me.
doesn't get better when you play it on your TV. It's still clunky and weird. But, the first two are the better games. 3 is fine, but the first two are the better games.
No, I would agree with
Ooh,
that.
what was that last one? Somebody got one for
Oh,
75?
Jason Little Alien, he says, I got a TurboGrafx 16 mint complete on eBay for $75. Bunch of games to never saw that console at a garage sale. Yeah, he's right. I've never seen that
Mm,
at a garage sale. With the
that's
games.
a once in a lifetime thing right there. You're never
Yeah,
going to see that again.
no, and you know what? It's ridiculous. Some of the prices now. He must have got this way before, because like I said, about 5 years ago, I got it for 129, and I thought that was that was borderline expensive at the time, right? I was kind of sitting
Oh
there.
man, if you saw that today, that would be insane.
No, now I sit there and I go, I just spent $650 for a Turbo Express with complete recap and LCD screen.
Yeah. That's like a mortgage payment now.
It really, or a car payment, yeah.
Yeah, a real nice car payment.
So, That's kind of rough. So that's why I was kind of curious as to what the backstory was with you on that, because if they haven't checked your channel out, people need to go do that. Why don't you guys, if you haven't, pop this open in another browser. Go to youtube.com/JohnnyGrafx, JohnNny Grafx, Grafx. For those listening on the podcast audio only, go there and check it out. He has a lot of great videos on this. But I was curious if you just decided to do this because it wasn't a common system and now that it's more expensive. But to hear that there's some history going all the way back, that this was one of your first consoles. And,
oh no, it's hugely integral to like my taste in video games. It was really the first really like bonding tool that me and my dad had, because I was so young,
right?
You know, and he worked a lot and was busy. So when he had free time, you know, there wasn't a lot of like, you know, let's go camping or something. I mean, that we did some of that later when I got older, but you know, at first it was like, you know, there was only so much time, so we would squeeze in, you know, trading the controller back and forth Splatterhouse session or Bonk or whatever. And so it was important there, but it also it really informed my taste on games and media going forward. You know, I'm a fan of things that are just a little bit offbeat, a little bit strange, a little bit weird. And I think a big part of that's probably because my first gaming system was the TurboGrafx and everything on it is weird and a little bit strange.
Yeah. So I'm going to be completely transparent here because I didn't know of you before reaching out. I ended up seeing you, I think, on one of Scott's podcasts, which I didn't know about him until Retro Rob kind of linked us all together here. But when you initially reached out and you said, "Hey, I'm JohnnyGrafx," and then you had your name and stuff, and I'm sitting here going, "Oh, he must be a graphics designer." Never put two and two together. And then I was talking with Scott after we did his show, and he's like, I was telling him about the Turbo Express. He's like, "Oh, you and Johnny are going to get along something terrible." He goes, "You guys are going to, you know, kick it off." And I said, "Oh, really? He's into TurboGrafx?" He's like, duh." He goes, "JohnnyGrafx." And I was like, "Oh, that's the guy." And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "What did you think?"
I thought he just really liked Photoshop.
I thought you were, because I was like, so then I really started paying attention to your channel, like going back through videos and watching, some of the content. And this is what I like about doing these shows, finding great content creators that sometimes are overlooked in the we'll call it the YouTube verse that's out there of noise, right? That to me is awesome when I find that stuff out. So
well, I'm glad you like it. Cool. I don't know if I'd call myself a great creator, but I'm glad that you enjoy it. And you know, I did cross into 3,000 subs not that long ago.
Wow,
I'm at
congrats, man.
3,100 and some change, but you know, and it's still a teeny tiny channel, of course, in the grand scheme of things. But you know, I consider it a little bit of validation, I suppose.
Well, no, I mean, listen, it takes, I think they said anybody that gets over 1,000, there's only a 10% of YouTube people that start on YouTube get over 1,000. I think that's what they said.
Oh, really?
I think I remember. So that's an accomplishment, you know,
yeah,
of all the people that are in YouTube. That's what they're saying. So, and then Retro Rob puts out this video today about the Lynx games. So that was something else that I didn't grow up with, right? Was the
That's a great video.
It was, because I've had that system for 2 years. I got a really good deal, complete in box, but it had no sound and it needed to be recapped. So I had a bunch of games that came with it, complete in box and stuff. Never got to really play it, and I got it back from Stone Age a couple days ago, and it was like Rob was reading my mind. He puts out this, and I'm like, "Oh, sweet!" So I have an EverDrive for it, so I can play a lot of these games. But
I want a modded version of California Games.
Yes,
where it's a low quality JPEG of Rob surfing on a Model 1 Lynx on the waves. Somebody needs to make that, and I'll pay for that.
So we're gonna normally we don't do Q&A at this point in time, but I think this brings up something that I was gonna kind of get into, because you would ask me what's my favorite game to go for on the Turbo Express. So I want to ask you, and I'm gonna put this in here from Distant Earth. He wants to know what good games are there on the TurboGrafx. So I'm gonna kind of put you on the spot, because I'm sure you can rattle off 10. You know, just your tops.
No, I mean it really it comes down to what do you like? I mean, do you like if you like shooters, you're set.
Yeah. Oh, it's Shmups is like the king of this.
It is, I mean, pound for pound, not just the sheer amount of shooters on the turbo, but the consistently top-notch quality of shooters on the turbo is unrivaled. You know, the Genesis maybe comes close, but the turbo, I mean, Hudson Soft was just firing on all cylinders with every game that they made on that system. You know, Soldier Blade, of course, is probably the best, in my opinion, anyway. You know, there's 3 Star Soldier games on there. There's Super Star Soldier, which is a sequel to the NES Star Soldier. And then there's Final Soldier, which was actually a PC Engine game. It didn't get localized, but it's not that hard to import. I don't think it's that expensive, although it may be. I don't know. I haven't checked. And of course, it's called Final Soldier, but of course, that, you know, it's not actually the final game. So Soldier Blade came out after that and is the best in the series. And so those 3, I would say, must plays. No matter how you can, whether it's emulation or buying them or whatever, play those 3 games. And if you like shooters, you will like all 3 of those games. They're absolutely like must plays. Now, if you're more of a platforming person, there's less to choose from, but there are still some good games. You have JJ and Jeff, which is it's hard to describe, but it's very Japanese and it's very goofy, but it's a fun platformer and it's a little tough, but it's fun. Keith Courage in Alpha Zones is not an amazing game, but it's better than a lot of people say. Like we were talking about Keith Courage earlier, and it got dumped on because it was a pack-in game, and there's a lot of pressure on the pack-in game to be excellent, right? To be representative, and it's not that. It's not a representative. It's just kind of an okay game. So if you view Keith Courage in a vacuum, it's a good game. It's easy to see it as that, but you know, as a packing game, it kind of underperformed, I guess. And of course, the Bonk games, you know, Bonk's Adventure and Bonk's Revenge are really interesting and different. You know, they're a little slower than like a Sonic or a Mario, but there's still skill involved and they're interesting and they're fun. Of course, you have some beat 'em ups with Splatterhouse. You even have a first-person shooter in a game called Silent Debuggers, which people don't talk about. I'm actually going to put that in a video that I'm working on currently in the background right now. So yeah, there's a lot there. It's missing like maybe there's not a lot of adventure games on there. You know, it could have like more in the way of that. But in terms of just like action games and especially shooters, I mean, you can just swing a dead cat in any direction and you'll hit something that's good. So just, you know, explore a little bit, explore eBay a little bit, and be prepared to spend a couple $100, but explore, and you'll more than likely find some really good stuff.
Well, it's interesting because everybody has their own taste in games, and so I always immediately go for, you know, the staple, like your Sonics, your Crash Bandicoots, your Mario. And I know you had said that, you know, like Bonk is clunky and stuff, but you know what other character can you go through and just use your head and smash things? Like
there's nothing else quite like it. There's nothing else quite like a Bonk game. I mean, I can't.
No, go ahead.
I can't think of much at all. I mean, it's just, you know, the jumping, hitting an enemy from above. You know, Mario did that, Sonic did that, a lot of characters do that. But Bonk, you hit enemies from below. You know, if they're above you, you jump up and his giant dome will destroy them from beneath. And of course, you can, you know, if you jump over them and do a flip, then, you know, you can hit them from above like normal. But Bonk is more versatile in that way. And so there's really nothing like it. Like you said, I can't really think of anything else that plays quite like it. So whether you like it or not, you have to admit it's a very least it's unique and it's interesting.
So I think it's just it's up to you guys, whatever you think. But I think if you haven't dove into it, you should check it out, and we're going to kind of get into this a little bit more. But Johnny, let's take a further step. You know, you had this, you got into the TurboGrafx, you had some friends and stuff. Now it's college years. Did you sell the TurboGrafx? I know you had alluded to that you kept a lot of the stuff from when you were a kid, but where did you continue playing this? Did you go to different systems? Where did you go from here?
Thankfully, I didn't take my turbo with me to college, because if I did, it might have got sold. I that stayed at my mom's house, out of reach from my idiot hands, thankfully, for that, for the next 10 years, more or less. Because I did take some PS2 stuff to college, and a lot of that got sold. These were games that weren't hard to replace those. Like, I had like Medal of Honor Frontline and, God of War 2 and stuff like that, that I did replace after I, uh, matured to some degree. Um, and um, and I think I sold some PlayStation 1 stuff too, that I've gotten all that back. All the stuff that I wanted there, I've gotten all that back. But yeah, college, thankfully, I was able to keep my turbo library and all that stuff separate from my idiotic selling stuff phase of college, which I guess we all went through. Apparently, I didn't know everyone else was doing that, but I guess so.
Well, everybody seemed to do that. I always ask, and they seem like mundane questions, but I think people like to hear, like, "Hey, I wasn't the only stupid one that sold my stuff."
Yeah, it's good to know. It's good
because
to
of what.
know.
And I like to try to have a little fun with it and kind of do that.
Yeah.
Now you start diving into the career. So what people don't know, and maybe you do know this because maybe you followed Johnny for a while, but Johnny also dove into video production and media,
Yeah.
and voiceover. If you listen to his videos, he has a spectacular speaking voice, and
Mm.
you sound like you belong on. I was actually going to guess, if you didn't put that in your bio, I was going to guess that you maybe were a disc jockey at one time. Maybe you worked in radio for a bit. So take us through that. Where did that begin? Was that in college, or where how did you get into this?
I think the voiceover career really probably did start in college, because we had a little college radio station, and this is my first attempt at college in 2006. This is Marshall University in Huntington, and this was a good school. They had a little radio station that was actually pretty nice, and me and a couple friends, they let us, for whatever stupid reason, they let us get up at the crack of dawn, go over to this station, turn everything on, and have a little show for a couple hours. I don't remember. It was like 4 or 5 a.m., 6 a.m. I think we were done at around 6:30 or something. And we just had the goofiest show. I wish I had recordings of it, or so. It's lost media, I guess. But it was a call-in show, and we would have people call in, and we would just make up debate topics on the spot. And a lot of them were like, here's what I think the best Pokemon is. And if you're on the road right now and you're a teacher, you're heading to class or something, you need to call us and tell us what Pokemon is the best. And we would have debates with people in their car, people that just happen to be up really early. And so I think that was when I realized, oh, this is like, it's kind of nerve-wracking when you're setting up and you're getting ready, and there's a lot of anxiety involved. But then once the lights come on and the mic is on, your instinct either carries you through or it doesn't. And for me, it just happens to click. And I think I had that instinct more or less when I did theater in high school too. I did some acting and stuff in theater, and it was like, I'm sweating bullets about this guy until I walk on stage, and then I'm fine and everything's fine. And I don't know how that happens, but I guess that it's just, for whatever reason, that's always been how it happens for me. I'm absolutely nervous, and then when everything starts working, it's like, okay, I'm fine.
But you know what they always told me? If you're not nervous, like, I still get nervous when I'm doing these productions, and people are always like, oh, you make it look so easy. But it's like, if you're not nervous, then there's something wrong. Because I don't feel like you put your full potential into something unless you're nervous, because you just think, oh, this is just another walk in the park. And I don't think you're at your peak of being in the zone. You know what I'm talking about? You get into that zone and you're just cruising, like you said, when you get in, on stage.
The flow state.
Yes, I think that comes from being nervous, because it really helps you get into character or whatever you're doing. So that's cool to hear that. A lot of similarities.
It's something that, like you say, you never not nervous, but over the years, it does, you do, I don't know if it lessens or maybe you just learn to deal with it a little bit better. But it does get less intense. At least it has for me over the years. But then, of course, I've always been doing something, whether it was a piddly radio show at a college, or it was me working at public broadcasting, or it was me doing this, gaming stuff, or whatever it was. I've always been sort of doing something of this sort. So I think for me, it's just kind of inevitably, it's lessened a little bit. I still have some form of jitters, but it's not as bad as it used to be. And but I never lose respect, like you say. If you're like totally comfortable and it doesn't bother you at all, you're probably like half-assing it. You're probably doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. You have to respect the medium, you have to respect the audience's time, and you have to be on the ball, to some degree.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying like something's easy. I've been doing it for almost 20 years, so yeah, there are things that come easy. But like being on camera is I don't think you ever get used to that, or in your case, acting or anything. I don't think there comes a point where you're just like you're not nervous because you don't want to screw up, you don't want to say the wrong thing, you don't want to improv incorrectly. But to listen to your voiceovers that you do on your videos, very very well rehearsed, even though you're probably not rehearsing a ton of time, and it was just
not really.
But it sounds like it. The long training, and it doesn't sound like you're sitting there reading a script like I did earlier, because I don't use teleprompters at all. And there's some guys that can do it where it doesn't sound like they're using a teleprompter, and then there's guys that just sound like they're reading.
Yeah.
And
well,
you
and
did
I do
really
have a
good
little
with
bit of that. I think I do have a little bit of that. Like I sound like I'm reading maybe a little bit sometimes, but and that's you're never done smoothing over your rough edges. You're never done tweaking your style. I mean, if you even just like, I don't know, if you go like 5 videos back on my channel, and you'll probably pick out a difference or two somewhere here and there. I think I've more or less found my voice and found my rhythm, but you're always tweaking and you're always smoothing things over, and at least you should be, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Every day it should be a learning experience and getting yourself better. Just like I said, I am not a post editor. I hate post editing and stuff, but I watch people like you. I watch Scott. I watch, all these different guys who I consider, a lot better than me at some of these video editing. Like I know how to use Final Cut enough to be dangerous, and Adobe Premiere enough to be dangerous, but am I to the level that you're at or Scott's? No, I'm still learning.
Well, I tell you, I love editing. I love editing. Video editing is probably my favorite part of the whole process.
Man,
I like writing. I like writing. I don't love writing. I like writing. There are moments where I'm enjoying writing, and there's moments where I can't wait to be done writing.
I don't like that either.
and the voiceover, I guess I enjoy the voiceover, although I do feel like it's kind of a means to an end, I suppose. It's me getting to the point where I can it's just another piece of the puzzle. There's the writing, there's the voiceover, there's the video editing, there's the thumbnail, and there's the this and that. And it's another piece of the puzzle, and I enjoy all the pieces to one degree or another. But the video editing, for me, I love video editing. I love it. If I could just edit video all the time, I would.
So I'm going to send you all my videos for you to edit since you love it. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
But seriously, though, that's a talent in itself if you enjoy doing it. I do it because I have to do it, and my videos need it. But
oh yeah.
But this type of stuff, to be able to sit here and put a show on where, I guess in the back of my mind, I'm always sitting there going, you got one take. To run an intro, to run a sponsor reel, to go into the show, run a commercial in the middle of it, to pull shot. There's something about that just gets my adrenaline pumping, and being able to converse with it and keep it real like a talk show, right? And keep it. So yeah. I know where you're coming from. Like I enjoy that. That gets me going too. So it's great, like to have somebody in this. So you decided, you got into this space. You decided the broadcast medium, and then you decided, this isn't cutting it, man. Like I want to get in, like I want to bridge the gap of my video games. I want to bridge the gap of broadcasting. And
right.
But you didn't do anything live. You didn't really go into any kind of like podcasting from what I've seen. Now I could be wrong. You more or less just went into like curated content, like you said, video editing and doing YouTube style videos, which is separate from broadcasting.
Well, first it was writing for for gaming outlets like Gaming Bolt. There was a point in time where I was writing for Gaming Bolt. I was doing voices for Gaming Bolt's YouTube channel, and I was writing reviews for Gaming Bolt. Like, I was one of the guys where, like, if you went to Gaming Bolt, there was like a 50% chance that you would be reading or watching or doing something that I did. Like, I was like one of the top guys there for a long time. Well, it's a, you know, like anything, you know, you learn from it, and I would never take it back. But there was a point where I was like, okay, I need to back off of this, because this is not what I want it to be, and this is not what I thought it would be. And I learned what I needed to learn. I got my feet wet. I discovered a new frontier. Yay for me. But I need to, you know, pivot to some degree, or I'm gonna go insane. So it was a similar reaction to what I had to straight media and the regular news media, where, you know, not to go too far, but maybe I'll tell you a little story to just kind of exemplify.
Yeah, put it out there, as long as you're cool with it. I mean, I don't want you to say anything that you're gonna regret, but
no,
the stories are always
call
good.
Anybody out. You know, like I said, there's no one person who is at fault.
Right, sure.
It's just this thing that started and is just going, and everybody's just trying to make a living and survive. And I'm not trying to throw anybody in particular under the bus, but I'll tell you a moment that changed my perception on maybe not just my career, but maybe just like the way my brain works. Like, I really had a realization where I'm shooting a story for this local news station I worked for, and it's there's a city hall meeting in this very small little town outside of the main capital city that I actually lived in. But we covered that area technically, so we were there because there wasn't a lot else going on. So we were at this little kind of supposed to be boring, sort of dry little city hall meeting, and charges start getting brought up and accusations start getting made that the mayor of this little town is corrupt, and he's put people in different positions because he knows them and they helped out his campaign. And there's like a lot of different things starting to bubble up in this little community meeting. And they end up having what's called a special session where they actually leave the main area and they all go into separate rooms and they talk privately so they can sort out things, and then they come back and then they have a resolution. And they didn't want me to go into these rooms. And so I was on the outside of the building trying to film from the outside of the window and stuff, because I was getting into it. I was like, oh my God, this is actually news, maybe, you know? And this is everybody's business, because this is town hall. These are your tax dollars. I mean, this concerns everyone in this community.
Sure.
And I need to film this. I need to get this, as much of this as I can, and delineate it to the public. That's why I'm here. That's my job. And I'm in the middle of doing it. And it's blowing up. The situation is unfurling. It's a big deal. And the station calls me and they pull me off of it. And they say, sorry, you need to leave. There's a car accident 10 miles down the road. We need you to go film that. And I'm like, no. Listen, this mayor might be resigning.
Yeah, that's huge.
Tonight, they were supposed to like talk about like how to clean a sewage drain. And now the mayor might be resigning. Like, this completely blew up. You want this. You don't want the car accident. And they're like, no. If it bleeds, it leads.
Wow.
You need to go film the car accident. And I'm like, bro, you can't do. I mean, and this person that told me that wasn't wrong to tell me that.
No, right.
Because it did make a more entertaining story, which is ultimately what it is. It's entertainment. It's not really there to help you. This car accident was nobody's business. This was the business of the people in the car accident, and the families of the people in the car accident, because they thought maybe somebody might have died. And it was really, if it didn't like, cause a giant kerfuffle and blow up a building or something, it's really nobody's business, in my opinion, other than the people involved in it. The whole town should not have been involved in this. The whole state shouldn't have seen that on the news. But I had to go film it anyway. And I had to leave an event that really was everybody's business in order to get that. And so it took me a while to kind of process all of that. It took me, there was several weeks where I went back in my mind and thought about this, and I'm like, this isn't right. Like, this isn't what I thought I was going to get into. I mean, I didn't expect to be, Walter Cronkite or anything necessarily, but but I didn't think I was getting into something that is functionally tabloid, a tabloid. And I didn't blow anything up. I didn't cause a problem or anything, but over the next few months, I started kind of planning, sort of rerouting my career and just thinking, okay, where can I go where maybe it's not as sensational, maybe it doesn't pay as well, but I won't feel like I'm sort of betraying what I feel like I'm here to do, which is to bring value to people,
Yeah.
and actually do something that's just kind of more inherently just valuable and meaningful. Even if it's something silly like video games, I'd much rather educate someone about a video game and have fun talking about like God of War or whatever
Yeah.
than that.
But
And so that's ultimately what I decided.
But
and it took me a while, but that's I came around to that.
you and I, living in Ohio here, the last 2 weeks, we discussed this off camera about the severe weather. Like, we were under a major severe weather outbreak last week. Fortunately, at least for us up here, it didn't materialize. But it like even last night, it almost seems like they were wanting a tornado to drop so bad,
yeah.
right?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
you know what I'm talking about. Like,
Oh, yeah.
they sit there and say, "Oh, we're so nervous. No, we got to cut in the TV. There's a tornado on the ground." Like, it's just like scaring
Now go
people.
get in it.
Right? Yeah, right. I get it.
Take
There's
your
people.
fragile human body and go run towards that tornado.
This is their job. And I made a comment on one of the posts. Do you remember? And I know I'm going to be 45 this year, and I know you said you're about 10 years younger. But do you remember growing up and seeing this many tornado warnings in a non-tornado area? It's almost like they want every storm to produce a tornado. Have you noticed that? There's always a tornado warning on something.
I don't know. I guess what you're getting at is it's being sensationalized
Yes.
for the sake of to get eyeballs on the TV. You may be onto something there. What I always think, I have noticed that trend though, you're right. But what I've always thought was, oh, this is people covering their behind.
Oh,
This is
yeah,
people
that's
trying
true. Yeah.
how a doctor will tell you, make sure you do all this and this and this and this, even though there's really nothing all that bad. But they're trying to overdo
So you
it.
can't sue them. Or
Yeah, and
malpractice.
also just so that you don't come back at them later and like, you should have told me this, on the off chance that maybe they were wrong about something.
Yeah.
It strikes me as behind covering.
Yeah.
On the part of the weather industry and but I think you may also be onto something. It may be a different case by case basis, station to station. It just depends. There may be sort of just if there's a tornado warning, more people are going to go to your news site. They're going to get more clicks.
You're going to get more views.
You're going to get more views on your tornado warning video.
Yep.
And then news stations, this is how news stations work for people that don't know. They don't get rewarded for being good at news. They just don't. I think a lot of the people in the stations want to be good at news, but that's not really how they're rewarded. They're rewarded for engagement. They're rewarded for eyeballs. They're rewarded for clicks on their website. They're rewarded for any sort of proof that they can take to advertisers and say, look how many eyeballs we got. Look how many clicks we got. Look how many shares we got. More advertising money, please.
Is it also how they handle it too, right? If they're put in those situations where they have to cover like an accident or a tornado or something, is how are they entertaining yet while they're talking about that thing, but also sympathetic to the family and being able to convey that to their audience, as well as being, like very concerned, like having all those emotions, right?
They can try to put a square peg in that round hole, but in my opinion, I mean, if you're choosing to show people a car wreck that's really not their business for the sake of getting farming engagement from them, that is disrespectful to the people you're filming.
I agree with you, but I think the people want to do that for their career, don't you think?
Oh yeah, well, and again, it's like you either play the game and you succeed that way, or you do, you don't play the game that way and you try to, do the right thing, and you end up on YouTube talking about video games.
Well, so we say all this to say, okay, so we're going into the broadcast space that he did, getting into the video game space, and we're going to get to his channel, but we're going to take a quick break and come back right after this important message.
Hey guys, let me tell you a little bit about something to do with energy. We all could use a little bit of energy in our lives, especially when we're gaming out there, right? We could all use some form of energy supplement, something to keep our mind sharp and our energy and our focus on the games. And that's where one of my latest partners, and that is MAW Energy, MAW Energy. And I want to tell you a little bit about it here today. And they have a plethora of different flavors and choices amongst everything that they have here. At MAW Energy, the mission is to fuel the gaming community with the highest quality energy. And that's one thing I like about these guys. They have a highest quality of energy focus blend on the market. And their special formulated energy drink provides gamers with sustained energy bursts and focus without the jitters and crashes. I can tell you that for certainty. Commonly associated with all the other energy drinks that I've seen personally on the market. And they're passionate about the gaming community and understand the unique demands that it places on the mind, the body, and even the soul. That's why we've partnered with this company to bring you the MAW Energy. Now, you can click on the link in the description below and check it out using my personal link. I get access to everything here, and I get credit for it. And you guys can see right here, Blue Raspberry. Blue Raspberry is one of my favorites. In fact, you guys will be able to see right here. I have the Blue Raspberry here, and this is one of my favorites, actually. I have this one, and I have the Mythic Melon. I haven't given that a try yet, but this so far, one of the things that I like about this is the fact that it's not chalky. A lot of times with these energy drinks, you get a little bit of chalk in there, and what I mean by that is that chalk aftertaste, or it doesn't dissolve. I can honestly tell you from experience, this here dissolves. So give it a try. Click on the link below and in the description and give it a try. You won't be sorry. I know I'm not.
All right, we are back, and guys, we put that out there. If you guys want to check it out, go check out MAW Energy. I know Jay from Square Pegs, he has it, and we were just talking, Johnny and I, about it, and I have to say, like, with the G Fuel, it feels heavier. There's filler. This doesn't have it. It doesn't give you the jitters, and I'm not trying to sell anybody on it, anything, but like if you're gonna give any of these a try, there's like Dovey out there. There's a bunch of them. Give these guys a try. And it's not just because I get a little kickback on it. I don't even care if I get a kickback on it, quite frankly. You don't even have to use my code if you don't, or click my link or whatever. Just try it out if you're interested, because there's so much. We were talking about the energy drinks, right? Like
they're so bad
Monster.
for you.
They're just so bad for you. But if you're a gamer and you're a geek and you want to, which one should you get? This is one that I was telling Johnny. I was like, if you're gonna try one, try this one.
Does it give you like a spike, or is it more like a consistent flow?
It's like a consistent flow, I would say. It doesn't. That's why I said it doesn't make you crash at the end. Like sometimes with the Monster, you're like this all day long, and then when it wears off, you're just like, oh, I'm so exhausted.
Yeah.
This is kind of like the same effect the soda would have on you. Like that constant caffeine drip or a cup of coffee or something like that. It's not,
but without the high fructose corn syrup.
Exactly. So you don't have that kind of stuff. So
good.
Yeah. But now we're transitioning here. You're going into the video game space. You're wanting to be a content creator. What tipped you off? Did you watch a special content creator that made you say, you know what, I could do that and I could do it better?
I never thought I could do it better necessarily, but I always did see, I watched AVGN, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I watched Classic Game Room, Metal Jesus, a lot of these big guys who are, in like the 2010s sort of, I guess
the Dr. Scotts.
The Dr. Scotts of the world. And it never occurred to me to think I could do that better than them, but I did think I could do that in my own way. I could do this in sort of my way with my sort of maybe a little bit dry, maybe a little bit, straight.
Sarcasm.
But, well, with my my public broadcasting kind of style that I had sort of developed working in straight media and stuff. And I could just kind of apply this with my sort of, I'd been editing video for years. I edited video in high school and did all kinds of goofy stuff with my friends. And so I sort of had the pieces to kind of put together. They were just all separate, like I loved and knew a lot about several areas of video games. I'm not like super knowledgeable generally, but I was knowledgeable about TurboGrafx and Sega and PlayStation. And I already had like a pretty good handle on how to edit video, and I already knew that I liked it. And I knew how to write, at least, competently. And I had I had the gear to do voiceover stuff because I was already sort of dabbling in that in other industries, like corporate stuff and
right,
what have you. And so it was just kind of like, well, all these pieces already kind of exist, so let's bring them together and see what happens. And you know what? It sucked for a while.
I think we all suck at some point.
Yeah. Well, and that was like, a lot of people say this, and it's so true. Like, you can't wait to be perfect and then start. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people want to do that. Like they don't want to make anything because they don't know exactly how they want to do it. They don't exactly know their style there, and they don't feel like they're quite good enough yet. And it's like, that's the perfect time to start. Yeah. Because when you start, then you really see your flaws, and you don't just know that you have flaws, but you see what they are and you can address them. And then the next thing you make will be a little better, and so on and so on and so on. And I never would have gotten to the point where I feel like I have a format, I have a style, I have sort of a mix of education and entertainment and some like off the wall, like weird humor that just kind of sprouts out and then goes away. Like I have my own style now, and I never would have found that if I hadn't just started and been crappy for like, months and months,
I think every person on YouTube like has that. They go back and watch what they did 10 years. If I went back and watched what I did broadcasting wise 10 years ago, I just shake my head, I cringe. But
oh yeah.
But that's a good thing, because that means you're learning and you're growing, right? You're bettering yourself. And so I don't think that it's something to be embarrassed about, but I think it's good to show people that, because you could say, look, you think I'm good, but look, I wasn't always here. This is how I started. This is how I muddled through YouTube the first year and didn't know what I was doing, and now here I am. And not that I'm anything special, right?
And the way I did it, I guess the way I did it is probably not recommendable generally, because like I hit it real hard at first when I first made the channel in like, I don't know, 2013 or something. I think
when you say hit it hard, you mean what?
I mean, like I really went at it. Like I made like 5 videos like in just quick succession. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I mean, I knew what I was doing like technically wise, but I didn't really know like what my voice, not literally my voice, but like my style, my perspective was really going to be. And I just had to do it. And so I did a handful, and then, I didn't really get much traction with them. And I kind of went away for a while and gave up on it. And I never said I wasn't going to come back to it, but I was just like, whatever. And then I came back and did another round of videos for like, 6 months or so. And then I kind of went away again for a few years. And then I came back again. And I think this third sort of revolution of returning to it, after everything I've learned in other areas of life and in other areas of content creation, I was much more positioned to just kind of let loose and just be whatever it is I was going to be. And I think, that some people that may work for, apparently that's what I needed to do. But, generally I probably wouldn't recommend it, but that is kind of what worked for me. Like I would hit it real hard. I would do a few, and then I would just go away and live life and do other stuff for like, 2 years or whatever. And then I would come back, and now I feel like I'm more or less back to stay now, because I've found a rhythm that I really like. And I found a style that, I'm not blowing up or anything, but I think I found a style that I feel like I can resonate to some degree with some, audience of some sort. And I've actually gotten to know I have some core people who are watching my videos, all of them. and not just because it's about a topic they like, but because it's me. And that's when I feel like when that starts happening, then okay, so now this is more or less, I mean, you'll always change, you'll always tweak here and there, but this is the road I want to be on stylistically. And that's a good feeling, and that's something that I think I can stick with. So I'm at that point with it now. And so how big or small it ever is, I can at least say I found my little lane, for whatever it's worth.
And I don't think people quite understand. Like, a lot of us, we do this as an outlet. We're not trying to be like
it's decompression.
Exactly. It's sometimes you have to get this out, and you want like-minded people to talk to. Like, I was talking to Steve Wright the other day, and I said, you know what? The best part about doing YouTube is, especially now that I've shifted gears, is meeting people like you and Scott and Rob and all these other guys that have been in the community that I had no idea about, and making friends and like-minded friends that we're all just like, hey, we're all on this journey together. We're having fun. We're supporting each other. We're watching each other's videos, and just giving ourselves an outlet to do this. Not that we're trying to be some big YouTube celebrities or anything. I know my kid wants to do that. He wants to be a YouTuber, but I want him to see the kind of work that we all have to put in to even get to a point where you're getting recognized, right?
Yeah, to even get a shot.
There's
so much you have to do just to get a shot at something, and that shot is still microscopic.
Well, and it is hard work, right? So you have to live and breathe it, and you have
to enjoy the work itself. If you don't enjoy the work itself, you're in trouble.
Well, and it's kind of like what you were saying earlier, like, wow, you have a lot of gear, but I put a lot of time. I lived this for years. This is my career. This is what I do, right? And that's what I show him. Like, in order to do the best you can for what you're doing, just like you said, you enjoy editing, right? So you put a lot of time. You learn this. You learned your craft. You honed your craft. You figured out how to do it the best way you can. Your workflows, everything. You kind of have to live and breathe it for a while. Like, you have to be focused on that. And I think we're just at that point in our lives. Like, we can't dedicate. We have jobs. We have lives. We have families. Wives, husbands, whatever. Like, we can't do this like some 18-year-old kid could do, right?
It's ironic. It's like it's kind of cruel, and it's kind of ironic, where it's like, when you really hit your stride creatively and you really find out what you're good at and you get good at it and you're really like on your game, it's like, oh, well, now you also have kids and husbands and wives and responsibilities and jobs and dogs and cats. And it's just like, youth is wasted on the young, I guess is what I'm saying, which is a phrase I heard a lot and I never understood until now. I'm starting to understand it now.
I feel like I haven't really even started getting in my groove until I hit about 37, 38 years old. Like, once I hit that, it was kind of like, now, okay, I have my house, I have my car, you know what I mean? Like, everything that you strive for up to that point, right? Like, you have your house. And what I mean by that, for me, it was like, we had our starter house. We just moved out of that in 2018 to the house what we're going to call our forever home, right? So it was everything that we wanted. So it was kind of like, okay, now I'm in my stride, right? Now it's focusing heavily. I had my career, but now it's focusing on, like, where can I take it to the next level? And I feel like that's where we're all at, right? Like, we just want to take it to the next level. And so you actually do that. You do that with your video editing, but you took it one step further. You started doing the voice acting, right? You're doing all that, the voice over. Right? Is that something that for the future, are you looking to get into some kind of voice acting in movies? Short films?
I do auditions. I've done some voice acting auditions here and there. I've gotten a couple of roles with some small projects. There's a couple mobile games that I'm on that I'm actually not supposed to talk about yet, but they're not, it's not like a massive deal. But and it's an area I'm interested in. I'm not sure if that's like my long-term plan to go to acting, although it might end up being that, because I do think when it comes to like corporate voiceovers and, doing presentations and PSAs and stuff, which is most of what I do currently, I do think AI is coming for that.
Yeah.
And it's, if you hear an AI voice now, you can sort of pick it out, but it's getting pretty good, man. It's getting pretty freaky. And I'm not sure how much time people like me have left to where like someone is willing to pay us $80 a pop, over and over and over again, or $200 a pop, depending on how long it is or whatever. Or would they rather spend like $1,000 one time and be done and have a software AI voice just do it forever?
Wow.
I mean, would I blame them for doing that? Not necessarily, but once that becomes the more commercially viable thing, which it kind of inevitably will, I think a lot of people in the mid tier and then even on the upper tier of just voiceover work, I think they're going to get pushed out. So I do, and I could be wrong about that, but that's sort of a doomsday scenario that I can see. I can see it clearly playing out in the next decade or so. So I am trying to diversify, and I do think acting is probably a good direction to go in, because I think AI is going to have a lot harder of a time doing actual acting than it will, narrating an audiobook about how to do calisthenics, or something.
Well, same thing with video editing. You said you liked it, but the AI video editing that's out there is actually pretty decent. Like, it's not where it should be, or where it needs to be, I guess I should say.
I'll tell you, and I'm not as worried about that. I am not convinced that AI can come in and do what I do when it comes to video editing. I'm not convinced about that. I think if you hate video editing and you just want some clips thrown together and you want it to sort of make sense and you want the color grading to be good and you don't want it to be too bright or too dark, yeah, AI can probably, make that easier on you. But in terms of, I mean,
what he's saying is I should stick with AI.
Video, what was that?
I said what you're saying is I should stick with AI, because that's exactly what I need.
It just depends on where your emphasis is. I think if your emphasis is on like what you're saying or, some other aspect of the content, then yeah, that might work. But for me, I view like the moment you cut from one thing to another thing, if it's 1 second early or 1 second later or right in that spot, it conveys a whole different vibe. It can be a whole different vibe. And, I have a very distinct rhythm with, when I'm done saying a sentence, for instance, I'll start the next thought with the voiceover. And then maybe about half a second into that, I cut to the next shot that I'm actually talking about. So there's like this little bit of subtle overlap. And that's just one example of the types of decisions you make as a video editor that create a certain vibe and can illustrate a certain personality and a certain rhythm. And I'm not convinced AI can do that. I'm just not. Maybe it will, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not super worried about that. If you really take video editing to that extent, I'm not super worried about AI coming for that.
Well, even with me, right? I have a lot of hardware video production gear, but everything's moving to the cloud, man. Everything's like where you can, like before, you used to send a video production, a TD, somebody out to a location to produce multiple cameras and things like that. Now it's getting to the point where, everything's in the cloud. I could sit here in my studio and send some cameras somewhere, hook it up to a network and switch it here and produce it here and do all that stuff. So I think slowly it's making our jobs a little easier, right? But I also think...
Yeah, that's the first part.
But I think there's something to be said with what you said. It's kind of like a buddy of mine told me this. He says, all these professional cooks that are out there, right? They put out their favorite cookbook, and your wives go out and buy the cookbook, and they want to make that tiramisu that's in there, and because the guy that's got 30 years experience has the ingredients down, right? As good a cook your wife is, she is not going to make it the way he makes it, because he's got that finesse. He knows how to make it. He perfected it, right? 30 years experience to perfect that. So with what you're saying, just like you editing, I don't believe anything's going to take that away, because you've taken that time to perfect your craft, just like me with video production for live. It's going to be quite a while before they could really do some kind of learning where it learns how you do things, and if it even gets to that point with the artificial intelligence that's out there, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure, like, how it's either that, the art aspect of what we
Yes.
do is so human, and I think it's either so there's something about it that you can't break down into zeros and ones, which is what I want to believe, or it's that there are so many variables to it that it feels like it's unquantifiable to ones and zeros, and it's just going to take machines so long to figure it out that I'll be dead by the time they do it. So either way, I'll be dead before it happens, I think. So I'm not super worried about it. But what I want to believe is that there's a human element to it that's just unquantifiable. And I can make a decision, and it wasn't an equation for me. It was a creative, artistic decision that came from something that AI just can't have because of just the nature of what it is. So that's
Right.
what I want to believe. I hope I'm right.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I keep saying, I've said it since I did tech. We talked about that off camera 10 years ago, where I said 4K, is a ways away. Nobody believed it, for live streaming. We literally just got into live streaming 4K like a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
Because of bandwidth, people don't have it. So I kind of agree with you on that. I think as much as people want it to happen, we still got a ways away.
Well, and what I'll tell people is if you're in a creative field and you want to do something creative, you should enjoy the creative process, at least to some degree. I mean, not everybody like you don't really like it video editing, but you still enjoy the space. You enjoy
I still
the
do it.
space.
Yeah, I still do it. I probably because I'm not good at it.
Well, but you enjoy it, or you wouldn't be doing it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And there's people out there who don't really enjoy anything of the creative space,
Right.
but they want to they want to make stuff and show people and be able to say that they did stuff, and they're the ones who are looking for AI to do everything for them. And
Yeah.
and I think there's going to be things here and there where it's going to make things easier, but ultimately, if you're not a creative person and you just don't enjoy being creative, it's just probably not the right space. I mean, it's just you need to do something else, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't look for AI as some sort of fix it for someone that just doesn't like being creative.
No, absolutely not. Because you can't go off of everything being algorithm and it's searching through the metadata and all that other good stuff that we all.
Mystically says they can't even do hands right, so he's right.
Well, there you go. So I mean,
like people's hands, look weird.
Yeah,
When you look
it's a
at
ways
images.
away. He's right. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I have a few people in the slot to come on, but I think Mysticals is next week. I think he's coming on next week. I think that's
okay.
Who's scheduled. I think.
Well, it's Mysticles. You're gonna have to say it right.
Mysticles. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
don't let the spelling fool you.
Okay, Mysticles.
It's Mysticles.
That's why I usually go by everybody's real name. It just makes it so much simpler. But this type of show is more for that, rather than the usernames. But I get it. So guys, at this time, what we're going to do is we're going to open it up for some Q&A. If you guys have been holding on to some questions, I know some of you guys threw some questions out there during the show, and we pulled them up. They were great. They went along with what we were talking about, so that was awesome. But if you have some questions you want to throw out here for Johnny, please, now's your time to put it in there so we can kind of, put a button on this, because this was awesome. I mean, you had a lot of great information, a really cool story, because you're the first one that didn't fall into the typical category of Nintendo Genesis. You were the round peg in the square hole, right? Or the square peg in the round hole.
There would be kids on the playground arguing over Sonic and Mario, and I would be like, "Hey, y'all know Bonk?" And they'd be like, "No, what are you talking about, you idiot?" So, but I eventually did come around to Sega because it did speak to me eventually. But there was a while there where I was like, "Y'all don't know about Bonk? Damn, I don't know what to do."
Yeah, well, and so as a Nintendo guy right now, I've been a Nintendo guy my whole life, but collecting for the complete NES collection, I don't know where I was growing up, but I didn't even know Bonk was on the NES until I started into this whole collection, and I'm like,
on the Game Boy too.
Yeah, and I'm going, how did I not know this growing up? Because we always, my brother and I, we always wanted Bonk on the Nintendo, and I'm like, how did we not know this? And had we have gotten it then, it would have been awesome because it'd be worth something right now. But we'd have it I'd have it in the collection.
Nintendo might have like suppressed him. You never know. Nintendo's crafty like that. They might have suppressed him because he would have.
It could have been. It was one of the
taken
later
eyes away
releases,
from
right? It was like
Nintendo.
93 or something that it was released somewhere around there. But is it based off of Bonk's 1 for the TurboGrafx?
I believe, yeah, the NES is basically a port of Bonk's Adventure. It's an inferior port, of course, because it's the NES.
Yeah, it's the NES version.
But yeah, I mean it is that game more or less. It's them porting that game, for better or for worse.
So Mr. Cleese has a question for you in the chat room. He says,
Mr.
"Hey,
Cleese.
are there any RPGs on the TurboGrafx 16?"
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a lot. We talked about Newtopia earlier. That is a Zelda clone. The TurboGrafx had a really good knack for like, we're going to take this game that's really popular and we're going to make our version of it. And it's going to be shockingly good, but it's going to be obviously a ripoff at the same time. And so that was what Newtopia was. It was them ripping off Zelda and making a shockingly good ripoff of it. So that's Newtopia and Newtopia 2. Actually, I would say skip Newtopia, play Newtopia 2. And I'll tell you why. It's because Newtopia, you can only attack in 4 directions, no diagonal. And that kills it for me. Maybe not for you, but try it and see what you think. I don't know.
But that's kind of how Zelda was. The original Legend of Zelda, you could only do it 4 ways. I don't remember if you could do it. I don't think you could do it diagonal.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't know, right? Because I don't
Oh,
know.
True. Yeah. So you wouldn't like that, the original one. Yeah.
I guess a point in Newtopia's corner for being an accurate ripoff, then I guess. But Newtopia 2 gave you the diagonal movement and diagonal attacking, and it was just a slightly bigger game. So I would say go straight to Newtopia 2 and play that game. It's wonderful. It's absolutely great. And Dungeon Explorer, more of a dungeon crawly gauntlet kind of style game, almost kind of a Musou game, like an early sort of Dynasty Warriors almost style game, because there's so many enemies and you have to destroy their spawn points and stuff. So, and that's a great, I actually like Dungeon Explorer better than Newtopia, even though Newtopia probably has more of a sort of a mainstream kind of appeal. But Dungeon Explorer 1 and Dungeon Explorer 2 are outstanding RPGs. They really are. They're super playable. They're super, like, you can play them anytime. Like, play Dungeon Explorer for sure. Outside of those two, there's not a lot. There's not a lot in terms of RPGs, unfortunately.
So,
your favorite arcade game?
Yes, Retro Rob in the chat room says, "Hey John, I'm a huge fan, by the way. Do you have a favorite arcade game?"
My arcade experience was kind of dodgy because when I was growing up, I mean, I'm in West Virginia, obviously, so there's just not that much in terms of arcade stuff. But, and by the time I was, in my teenage years where I could really enjoy an arcade, most of them were gone.
Yep.
But I do remember playing some of these Sega games, like Virtua Cop. That was a Sega game, right?
Yep. No, Virtual Cop, that was a Saturn, yep.
Okay, well, it was an arcade version of that where there was like, you would stand in this weird like cage and you lean around to make the character lean around, like from behind cover and stuff.
Okay.
I'm almost positive that was a Virtua Cop game. I don't know if it was 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, but that blew my freaking mind. I loved that. I would go to the mall. We had an arcade in the food court.
Yep.
And I would go to the food court with my friends, and they would be chit-chatting and screwing around in the mall like we did. And I would go play this. I would run away. I would kind of like separate, and I would go play this game for like 20 minutes and be like, "Where did you go?" I was like, "I was playing Virtua Cop, dude. You do this." And it just blew my mind.
And now all the arcades have PCs in them now, so they're not even like real arcades at all.
Yeah, totally. Like everything's just PCs, but that's fine. Whatever.
So there's a question for Jason Little Alien in the chat room. He says, "Which TurboGrafx 16 game, if rebooted with modern graphics, would you buy on day one?" That's actually a good question.
I'd probably buy any of them if they were rebooted. I would be so excited to see any of those properties come back in any form. I'd probably buy any of them.
That's a cop-out.
But
Yeah, I had to throw that. Yeah, that's a cop
it is
out.
a cop out, but it's also true. I'll give you a real a little more of an interesting answer though by modifying your question slightly, and I'll say which one I would want to see most, and that would be Legendary Axe. I think the Legendary Axe franchise absolutely has potential. Make it. I'm saying it. I'm saying it now. Some developer hopefully hears this. They can do it. I don't need credit. I don't care. Just do it. Make it like God of War. Make God of War 2018 style over the shoulder hack and slash game, but Legendary Axe with Gauguin and all those weird sort of like animal characters and like you fight the bears and everything. Just do Legendary Axe, but do it like God of War. That's a home run waiting to happen.
All right. Scott says,
oh, here we go.
I got nothing. Okay, how about this? He says, you're going out to eat. You're wanting to, or you're wanting to somewhere that serves your favorite entree. What is that restaurant?
You're wanting to eat somewhere that serves your favorite entree.
I don't know. He wrote it in broken English, so I don't know if he was just kind of slapping it together here. So, but yes.
Yeah. Let's see. You want to eat somewhere that. What is this? Are you just asking what my favorite food is?
I'm telling you, man. He throws these ones out there. It's hilarious.
Like just figuring out the question is a puzzle.
Right.
Are you are wanting to eat somewhere that serves your favorite entree? What is the restaurant?
What's the name of the restaurant that serves your favorite entree? Let's just say that.
Good Lord, what a convoluted way to ask what my favorite food is. Or my favorite restaurant is. That's all you had to say, Scott. Good Lord. Let's see. That's tough because I like a lot of them. I used to really like Red Lobster a lot when I was younger because of those biscuits.
All you can eat shrimp, baby.
Red Lobster biscuits?
All you can eat shrimp. I love Red Lobster for that.
Yeah, I like the shrimp too. I think I have a shellfish allergy. I think I developed a shellfish allergy in my adulthood though, which is really unfortunate.
Oh, that rots.
Yeah, but the biscuits, I live for those biscuits. And there's a bar in Huntington called Gresso's, or not Huntington, in Columbus, Ohio, where I lived for a few years. And they have these pierogies that are really good. So I would say this little kind of bar where they would have these crazy Steelers events too. So I would go there for that whenever there was a Steelers game. They would just get packed. And but yeah, the pierogies at Gresso's and the little biscuits at Red Lobster. So I would probably say those two. If I were to sit and think about it for a while, I'd probably come up with something better. But that's what comes to mind.
All right. Next question is from LL Cool Games. Question: what modern games do you play in your free time? See, Scott, that's how you ask the question.
Well, ever since like 97 or whatever it was when we got our PS1, I've been a PlayStation guy, and I never really deviated from that much, other than going back and doing hitting retro consoles that I missed in their heyday. So I'm on the PS5 now, and I really like a lot of these AAA kind of action adventure kind of story driven, these really high budget games. I know they might be going away. They're sort of an unsustainable thing right now, but I really like Uncharted. I love The Last of Us. I love God of War. I love the Horizon games. Those two Horizon games are absolutely phenomenal. I love those Horizon games. I platinum both of them. Right now I'm playing Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, which is this really, really high quality sort of JRPG action game that was in development for like the better part of a decade. They just took so long polishing. And now it's this extremely high quality looking and really well playing game. And so that's a lot of fun. I'm playing that right now. But yeah, generally I like these AAA, big action adventure games. When I'm in the mood for a modern game, I tend to go with one of those.
All right. And another question. I think this is Scott's wife. I think she says Harley wants to know what your cat's names are.
They're actually, I'm shocked that neither of them have pestered me throughout this whole thing, but we have Sinbad, the old boy, the old man, and he's a cat I've had basically since he was born. He was born in 2007, so if you do the math, that means he's about to turn 17. And so I had him and his brother. His brother unfortunately passed away a few months ago. He had they both made it to 16. I'm perfectly happy with that lifespan, and the vast majority of life he was very healthy and happy. And his name was Rambo, and so they were brothers. And so now it's Sinbad is he's still trucking along. He's doing good, and we have a younger cat that we got almost a year ago now. We got her. Her name is Miku, and she's about a year and a half, maybe 2 years old. And so we love her to death. So we have Sinbad and Miku right now. Those are our children, basically.
I think it's funny that it took, if you go back through the comments there and look, it took Scott like 20 lines of comments to explain what his question was to you. And we were supposed to figure this out on the fly.
Oh, man. We do what we can with Scott. We love Scott. Well, we do a good job with Scott.
Yeah, we'll have to work on his communication skills. That's okay.
Well, I gotta say this about Scott before we move on to the next question. Let me give a big, compliment to Scott.
Be careful. Don't inflate his head too much.
I have to tell the truth.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I love Scott. I
have to tell the truth on this man. I would not. I know Rob sort of connected all of us to you, and obviously, that's wonderful and everything. But Scott pulled me into the group with Rob, more or less.
Okay.
I was vending. This whole YouTube career of mine. I mean, I have friends that dabble in content creation, and I got a friend that does a lot of marketing stuff, and he sort of dabbles in it. But I haven't really had real friends in the content creation space before Scott. And Scott brings me, we meet at, I want to say Korg. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott. It was either Korg or Torg. They rhyme, so I don't know. But I was vending. I was offloading some of the games I didn't want, and so I was vending that year. And he, I don't remember how we got to talking, but he comes up. He's 10 feet tall. You can't miss him. And so we're talking about games and stuff, and we're talking about Classic Game Room and how we both want Classic Game Room to come back. And we just kind of immediately clicked. And so he turns me on to his YouTube stuff. And so I tell him, "Oh, I have YouTube stuff too." And so we kind of start talking about that. And before we know it, I'm on his podcast, and I'm meeting Gene from Caps Off Gaming, who you should really have on here.
Yes, and have him reach out.
Oh, has he not reached out? Okay, yeah.
I don't think he has.
Okay, well, we have a group chat with him, so we'll get on there and we'll harass him until he does. So I'm meeting these phenomenal people, Rob and Scott and Matt and Gene from Technish, and now I've met you, and it's been really a fun experience for me, and really once in a lifetime sort of opening up to this really nice, really fun and energetic and interesting group of people here that we have in our orbit. And I've talked a little bit with Square Pegs and Mr. Right Way and these other characters that I'm not as tight with them, but we're all kind of in each other's orbit, and it's really fun, and I've really enjoyed it. And it's all Scott for me, at least. He pulled me into all of that. And before that, I was more or less just kind of I was just this asteroid just floating out in space, and now I feel like I'm in a solar system, if that's not too much of a tortured analogy. So so I gotta give that to Scott for sure.
Okay, so apparently he did email me because he CC'd Retro Rob, so I have to go back because there's a bunch of guys that said they wanted to come on. Maybe I just didn't recognize the name, but there was. So I want to make sure the people that are requesting, we want to get them on. Like it's not that I'm trying to be vain by having people ask to come on to make it sound like, oh, they're asking to come on. It's not that. I don't want you to come on if you don't want to come on. Like I want it because it's not fun then. If it's like, okay, I'll come on, I'll tell my story, like, no, I want it to be, this is for the community, but it's also for you. It's a great opportunity for you to open yourself up so people can see what kind of creator you really are. Like, I think there's just something to that where people go, man, I like this guy. I respect this guy. I'm going to watch his stuff because he's just so awesome. So
Well, and Gene is infectious. Like when he'll have you, he'll have you smiling from ear to ear, and you won't even know why. So definitely,
It'll be a
have
lot of
him on
fun.
by any means necessary.
So I know I'll be at Korg's this year coming out. So hopefully you guys are there. That's not Torg's is the one that's later. Gary's Korg's will be in Columbus in June 1st, I think it is.
Yeah, yep, that's right around the corner.
So I'll be out there.
It'll be my first time going there without being a vendor, I think. So it'll be
cool.
Nice to kind of not have.
Yeah, we can all hang out. We can do some content in person and stuff because, like I said, I'll be there, and
we can go out to eat. We can go get some dinner.
Right Way will be there. We'll have a bunch of people, so we'll have a ton of fun out there. So I'm looking forward to it. All right.
Yeah, that'll be a blast. I'm excited for that.
Let's see if there's any more questions. If you guys, somebody want to put a last question, then we're going to wrap this up. We're about at that hour and a half mark. I like to try to keep it so people go back and watch it. But I'm going to pull this up because Jason Little Alien, he is on it. I love it. He's one of my moderators here in the chat room. He does a lot for a lot of people. Guys, he loves doing it. Be sure to check out JohnnyGrafx, youtube.com/JohnnyGrafx. Remember, there's 2 N's in Johnny. So make sure you put that in there.
And Grafx is spelled wrong because TurboGrafx.
But it's the way the cool kids spell it, like the TurboGrafx. So
if you got to use X's and things,
you have to. Cool. You have to.
And also, check out the content. But by all means, I don't want people to subscribe just because people are telling them to subscribe. I really pride myself on building my audience out of with a very slow, very steady incline of people that are genuinely interested in what I do. And if by all means, if it doesn't resonate with you, then no need to subscribe. But feel free to check it out, obviously. And if you do like it, then go ahead and subscribe.
See, I always tell people that too. They always think if they get a big YouTuber on their show or their channel, that right away they're going to get this huge bump in subscribers. And I try to tell them, I'm like, look, that guy that has 40, 50, 60,000 subscribers could tell somebody till he's blue in the face to go subscribe. If they don't resonate with you, if they don't like your content, if they don't like the way your voice is, they're not going to subscribe. It's just how it is.
That's the way it should be because Agreed. I don't. There are people out there who have 100,000 subs, but their videos get 400 views, 200 views. And they can barely crack 1,000 views on a video, and that's because they have a bunch of people sub to them that aren't actually interested in them.
Exactly.
I don't want that. I'd much rather have, 1,500 subs where everyone watches everything than 1 million subs where only 2,000 people watch anything. That disparity I think is weird how some accounts have that, and I'm not into, you're not going to see me pander for subs or
no.
I'm not even really a fan of giveaways or any of these little tricks that people do to just inflate their sub number. I want people who genuinely like my content and want to hang around for more of it. And that's it. That's if that's not you, that's totally cool.
Yeah.
And we can still be friends maybe.
But that's why this show, it's not for everybody. Some people just I don't like the interview shows. I don't like watching them. And that's fine. That's totally fine. We've got a core group of diehards that come out every Thursday when we do it.
Exactly. And that's what you want.
They want to learn about the content creators. They want to meet new content creators because they want to fill up their YouTube Rolodex to get good information, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing. That's the whole premise of this, to be able to do that, to bring this to you guys. What's this? Smash that like rotten, baby. It's very much okay. Very much
Smash the like rotten.
Yeah. Well, Johnny, I appreciate you coming on here and hanging out with us. Guys, again, go check out his channel. Check if you're into TurboGrafx. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, see what you think. I know that the ceiling for TurboGrafx content is relatively low because there's only so many games in that library. So I'm alternating between that and other stuff that I'm also passionate about, and I also know about, like the PS1 and shmups generally, and you see the Aliens games video and stuff. So there's TurboGrafx is definitely my specialty, just aesthetically, and that's my starting point with games. It's very important to me, but there's other stuff too. So feel free to just kind of browse around and look around.
Awesome. And guys, I really appreciate everybody tuning in and hanging out with us here like we do every week. We try to do it every week as long as the weather's cooperating with us, because we can't. I don't like to pull my. I have too much gear to pull up, and even with battery backups, to run
not
when
worth
there's
the risk.
storms. No. And
Yeah.
plus, I would rather make sure that we're not going to get cut off in the middle of the show, and it ruins something that we've got going good. So,
we made the right decision by pushing it out.
100% made that. I do not regret it one bit. So, guys, I really appreciate it. We will be back next week with Mysticles, right?
Mysticles
next week. So, tune in for that. We'll see you next time. Keep it buzzing.